Hello and good morning from Tech Mahindra, and on behalf of Tech Mahindra CII, I welcome everyone for this wonderful webinar on managing cybersecurity risk and data analytics in post-COVID world. Today, I am delighted to have some eminent panelists on this webinar. Leading the show would be our country head and director from Indonesia, Thailand, and Philippines, Mr. Pranab Choudhury. And the discussions will be led by Mr. Radju Munusamy, who is the partner at PwC Indonesia, Mr. Rajesh Dhuddu, who leads our cybersecurity practice and is a global practice leader for blockchain at Tech Mahindra, as well as Mr. Deb Mukherji, who is the practice head, data and analytics for ASEAN region at Tech Mahindra. As the show goes on, just few rules, or I would say some of the best practices that I would want to announce. Any questions, you can always put those questions in the question window over there. We'll pick up the quick questions after each speaker session, and also a detailed Q&A would be at the end of the event. So with that, I request Mr. Pranab Choudhury to take the show forward, and I look forward to an active participation. Thank you. Mr. Pranab, you are on mute.
Yeah, thank you so much, Malar. Very good morning, everyone. Am I audible?
Yes, Pranab, you are.
Great. Okay, thank you. Very good morning to all of you. Salamat pagi. On behalf of Tech Mahindra and CII, I would like to welcome you all for today's session. It is a pleasure having you all here. Thank you. First, a little bit of my background. I am Pranab, and I head the Tech Mahindra enterprise business for a few countries in Southeast Asia. Before we continue further, I hope you're all doing great in these tough times. On behalf of Tech Mahindra and CII, I wish you and your loved ones good health and safety. Now, I'm sure you all can see some esteemed speakers who have joined the session. Malar has already given you a brief background. I'll also introduce their profiles in details when we go ahead with the session. Before we start, I would like to give some background of today's session. What we will be discussing today is business strategy and its relationship with technology. Now, in this relation, I can think of a very interesting example that I just went through recently. So Myanmar was in a state of a nationwide census, its first time in 30 years. And suddenly, the advanced technology backbone that was set up for the entire census completely failed. You must be wondering what actually failed, a country's census, and what technology, stopped them from going ahead with the census. You'll be surprised to hear there's complete lack of data and planning. They realized that they had shortage of about 170,000 pencils, and without that, the census could not have been completed. So all of a sudden, an emergency procurement system was set up to procure this 170,000 pencils so that the census could be completed on time. So that's how important data analytics plays in today's world. Now, what is more interesting is what the result of the census were. As an outcome, Myanmar realized that the population of Myanmar was 51 million and not 60 million. All this while, they thought that the country's population was 60 million. So the government defined its strategies, its budgeting, planning, everything for additional 9 million, which never even existed. So this is a perfect example on how important data and analytics is part of any business strategy, whether it's for an organization or for a country. This happened as recently as 2014. On one end, we had countries like Germany who were winning the World Cup based on data analytics. On the other end, you had countries like Myanmar who were unable to complete the census only because of lack of data and planning. Now, speaking of Indonesia, which is also going through some major digital transformation initiatives, and how data and security plays an important role. In the recent past, Indonesia has taken some important steps towards fulfilling its digital ambitions. Big data and security plays a very important role in such strategies. The government has launched multiple such strategies, and of which Indonesia 4.0, which focuses on end-to-end digitization of all physical assets and integration in digital ecosystem, is an important thing. Digital technologies enable shorter lead times, higher asset utilization, and maximum product quality. A recent study by AT&T assessed that digitization alone could add $1 trillion to the ASEAN economy by 2025. $1 trillion. And in line with that, Indonesia has made some great leaps forward in connectivity over the past decade. And it now has more than 60% penetration with more than 170 million internet users. Now, without solid cybersecurity systems, 170 million internet users in Indonesia are at major risk of being caught in some Black Mirror episodes. The younger generation in Indonesia love technologies, and we all know that. And that's not just about social media. A recent research by Cambridge International shows that Indonesian students are among the world's highest users of technology when it comes to education. And they are far ahead of many other developed nations in this world. Now, the rapid development in internet and information technology in Indonesia has led many companies to revolutionize the way they do business. Use of cloud computing, applications for big data, and many other digital transformation initiatives, however, does not necessarily mean things become easier and risk-free. I would like to cite some recent examples of some cyber attacks on some large conglomerates like Gojek, Telkomsel, Tokopedia, etc. We all know of these major attacks that happened in just last 1 or 2 years. In 2019 alone, Indonesia had faced 220 million plus cyber attacks. That's just in 1 year. And the total loss that conglomerates faced was more than $35 billion in just 1 year. So you can imagine how important it is to have secure systems as part of your strategy. Hence, your business data and security protocols represent your intellectual capital, your competitive differentiator, and the livelihood of your organization. Tech Mahindra offers data security and protection that empowers businesses. We offer end-to-end solutions for various industries like banks, insurance companies, manufacturing, retail, etc. While globally, we are a large conglomerate with more than $5 billion revenue, we also have significant presence in Indonesia. And in Indonesia alone, we have more than 500 people working based in Jakarta to support our customers in various digital transformation initiatives. We also have a lot of learning that we can bring in from our global practices. For example, TechM has multiple customers in the Fortune 500 companies. And we have gained significant amount of learning that we can bring into countries like Indonesia when we help our customers with digital transformation initiatives. So in today's session, we'll have industry experts from Cardin and Tech Mahindra who will give their insights on the market and also present the intricacies of establishing an organization with secure data to modernize business. Now with this, I'll take the privilege of introducing today's speakers. So we have with us Radju Munusamy, who is a senior member in Cardin and also a partner in PwC Indonesia. Welcome to the forum, Radju.
Thank you.
Radju
Thank you.
heads the digital strategy practice, assisting clients in market assessments, commercial due diligence, and advising on integration to corporates. Prior to joining PwC, he was chairman of Jepsen & Jensen, Indonesia group of companies. Now, being a member of Cardin, he's closely involved with multiple business entities in Indonesia. Our next speaker today is Rajesh Dhuddu, who is global practice leader of blockchain and security services in Tech Mahindra. Rajesh is part of our leadership council at Tech Mahindra, and he has dual responsibility of heading business and cybersecurity for Asia Pacific and global practice leader for blockchain. He has more than 21 years of experience in telecom, payments, and various other industry verticals. With strong technology background, he's been a speaker on multiple forums in the recent past to discuss on security offerings and how important security and blockchain is for digital strategies. Welcome, Rajesh. I'm also delighted to introduce our next speaker, Deb Mukherji, who's a practice head, data analytics for ASEAN and North Asia business of Tech Mahindra. With over 2 decades of experience in the IT sphere, Deb is a seasoned leader with a demonstrated history of working in the information technology and financial sector. In his tenure, he has demonstrated the virtue of a strong leader to his various roles in various IT organizations like Oracle, IBM, etc. His strength lies in financial planning and analytics and advising industry leaders on formulating data strategies for their organization. Would also like to thank Sujata for all her support from CII in helping us jointly organize this event. Thank you. I will now hand this over to the experts to provide their perspective of data and security and how they think IT can be a strong enabler in these areas for businesses. Like Malar mentioned, please feel free to send in your questions to the chat option. We will be more than happy to take as many questions as possible, and we'll try to respond to your queries towards the end of the session. We'll also have some polling sessions, so please send in your votes and we'll publish the result of the polling session. Thank you all once more. So please sit back and enjoy this webinar. Over to you, Paraju. Thank you.
Thank you,
Pranab. Yeah, thank you. And Mr. Raju, just before you jump in, I will have a quick poll here just to start the proceedings, and then we can have your conversation. I hope that is fine.
Sure.
Thank you. Yeah, team, can you launch the poll, please? Yeah, thank you. Just a quick poll. There are no right or wrong answers. Just feel free to share your answers.
I think I miss all of them.
Yeah, absolutely.
You should have one more column there, one more row there. All of the above.
Yeah, that's right.
We should have.
I agree.
That would have the most answers then. All right, we'll have just for a minute or so. Thank you everyone who has been giving answers. Team, we can wrap up and show the answers, please. My team. All right. So the poll says about 53% people are missing traveling. Yeah, I know all of us are in the same bucket. And thank you so much for all the answers. And I hand over to Mr. Raju to take the proceedings forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you. First, thanks, Pranab, for the kind introduction. And I also like to thank Tech Mahindra for inviting me to this event. I hope I can provide insights into the main topic of today's discussion. So, we understand that COVID has limited people's mobility, but it has actually increased event mobility. Webinars have become so common. Some of us, or many of us, actually do multiple webinar at a given time. Some of you might have done that, and I won't be surprised if there are people who are currently also join in multiple webinars at the same time. The point here is that if you talk about COVID and we talk about any COVID impact, whether it's on cybersecurity, data, or anything else, first is we do not know when COVID will come under control. The virus itself will be perpetual. So one can only assume that what is valid during the current situation will likely applicable even after the vaccine is discovered, even after the cure are there. So that brings the importance to today's topic. We have increased presence of technology, interconnectivity, data-driven management decisions, and also more remote accessibility. Even before COVID, this was an important topic, but now it becomes more so. So today in my speech, I will briefly cover a broad overview of cybersecurity as a risk factor and what is the impact during the increased risk during the COVID moments or COVID's, I would say, time of COVID. What can we do about it? And finally, how do data analytics role gets enhanced in the new normal world? Now, my speech is going to be non-technical. I'll be more from the high-level strategic issues, and I'll also give some practical approach. So let's talk about what I call, cybersecurity is an Achilles heel of modern organizations. Now, let me start by asking 3 questions. First, how often do you discuss cybersecurity in your board meetings or senior management meetings? 2, has your organization conducted independent assurance audit, and what was the outcome? And 3, do you have any idea on the likely financial damage should your organization experience a cyber attack? Now, these are just simple questions to assess if cybersecurity is among your strategic priorities and the readiness of the organization itself. Ideally, what starts as awareness will be followed by understanding. Then you set up the tools and the technologies and the governance. And finally, cybersecurity to become an agenda for the leaders. Cybersecurity management and mitigation, as you know, it's not only about IT infrastructure or access control, but it's about mindset. It's about culture of risk awareness. And that's what we emphasize, managing business processes and how you continuously able to detect anomaly. That anomaly can be in people, it can be in process, it can be in technology, it can be in your physical sites. So it's not only talking about the IT infrastructure per se. The cybersecurity risk is made up into this entire holistic, and therefore you need also a holistic approach in sorting this out. Organizations are also often uninformed, or worst case, ignore the potential losses from a cyber attack. We normally get to the direct costs. What is the remediation cost, the investigation cost, what penalty you have to pay if you are an industry which is regulated, for example. Any attack, we might raise some penalty, and then loss of customers. But we often forget the indirect costs. The insurance premium will increase based on the attack. What about the time and resource you have to spend if there is a legal or lawsuit coming up? And also there is intangible, such as damage to brand reputation, and also value erosion from the corporate point of view. And I hope with better understanding on cost, we can also place higher priority for cybersecurity as part of the top management agenda. Now let's talk about COVID itself and the cybersecurity. Well, as we all know, COVID has caused a change in the way we work. And that by itself has enhanced the risk factor. What was a good practice that may not be good enough now with new risks emerging? Now, there is a new situation, so companies may take new technology to manage business. Employees may not be properly trained and prepared for this new technology. This just exposed potentially lead to new security risk. New tools are being installed abruptly, bypassing a standard protocol. Why? Because people just have to working from home. Security control is lacking. There is no proper assessment done. all this increases the risk factor. IT teams are scrambled to support staff working from home. When you work from home, you have a lot of questions. Your IT teams are now focusing more and more into answering the questions from the employees. That means less resources available to detect any attack or to respond to those attacks. Staffs working from home. How many of your staffs working from home actually have a proper work area and not exposing the work content, whether it's the family members, for example? All this put data at risk. The family member may be watching or listening. If your business involves some confidential conversation, in the office, you may move to a meeting room, or the office may have some phone booth where you go and have a discussion. You don't have that at home. What you discuss is exposed. Or maybe worse, you have your kids also studying from home now. Maybe they start using your computer or your office issued gadgets. They may go use the social media and expose the computer and the gadgets to potential hackers. Attacks are also easier to detect when you are working from office environment. But once you are in a remote location, if you do not have proper firewall and protection, your IT team may not have the ability to quickly isolate and contain such attack. Senior management also are busy getting the business going. They put more emphasis how to survive. That means less attention for cybersecurity issues. There might be budget cuts. Cybersecurity area might be the one to face the such cuts. There will be competing priorities for resources and probably a reduced IT staff too. They'll be constrained to make a quick patches when attacks occur, for example. And finally, let's not forget this. Attackers do not take rest during lockdown. Right? They may actually have more time now when they're staying home. What used to be a part-time hackers now can become a full-time hackers. And hacking does not mean getting the result, hack now and get the result now. It can be hours, it can be days, it can be months before that actually takes place. But this is the time for them to start sending all those potential malwares. Now let's talk about mitigation of these attacks. What I would say a suggestion here is actually going back to basics. That's what you can do at the bottom of it. Right? I'm not going to talk about the technology, what is available, but let's go back to basic and let's looking at it from the content. Forget about the content. Let's look at it on the process itself. First one is more people are working from home. So remote working practices must be a secure one. Think about it. If you have 1,000 employees and 50 of them used to work remotely, it will be easy to detect any infiltration. But if all thousands of them are working now remotely, you need to change the way how these attacks are going to be identified. Right? You need more sophisticated method. You may need more resources. How to single out any unauthorized entries when these 1,000 people are all working remotely. So there are some examples that you can do. First is ensure that all the controls that you have for working from office will actually applicable to external environment when people are working from home, for example. You can also start ensuring all the computers and gadgets have all the necessary patches before it's being authorized for remote working. So it's not automatic. People take the computer home and they start working from home. Now, for some of us who've been exposed to this working from home, I won't call it working from home, but working remotely. For example, if you're in consulting, you may work most of your time anyway from client side. So your company is better at managing such things. Your gadgets and computers are probably up to date. But we can't say the same thing for most of the organizations out there. Now, that was the first one. just assuring that the working practices to work from remote location are secure one. But we need also to maintain the continuity of critical security functions. So give you an example, your people, your technological capabilities, the process to detect and how to respond, how strong are they? Should you have another look into it? You also have to start increasing the frequency for patches and mandatory updates, including force updates. A computer cannot be used unless it's been upgraded. These are some of the things that has to be put in place. What about asset management tools, for example? When the computer used to be at office, that may not be such a big issue. But now that it started moving around, you need to look at differently from the asset management tools perspective. Now, the third basic here is you need to counter any opportunistic threat that may be looking to take advantage of the situation. As I said, you may not have the attack now, but what can cause the attack is already inside. So doing higher frequency of alerts or pop-ups or other communication tools to users, that will be required. Some companies already generates random phishing, for example, as an education tool, just to increase awareness and make cyber risk awareness as a company culture, as employee culture. And as and when there is a new threat emerge, you need to communicate, educate the users, educate the employees without having to be sound alarm. At least let the employees know that certain things are going on. If a hacker is sending emails saying that there is a cure for a COVID, they give you the link, you register. Most people in this current situation probably just get excited just to go there and get free cure for COVID-19 without knowing that that might actually be dangerous sites they are visiting and exposing not only themselves, their private information, but also the company's assets as well. So you can also provide guidance to employees on using their or not using their work email, for example, for personal use. E-commerce, social media, things like that are probably more vulnerable than can affect the company's assets as well. And finally, review some policies. Policies that were good before, but maybe now it's become counterproductive in the current situation. I'll give you an example. Some companies have this, they will not reimburse a purchase unless it is made on a company linked account, for example. You need to think about whether this is still a sound policy right now, or maybe you'll actually let employees use personal account and to purchase certain things for the company purpose and then get it reimbursed. So that's overall when we want to talk about cybersecurity. Now, we also want to talk a little bit about data analytics. Now, as I mentioned before, there's a lifestyle habit change during COVID-19. There is more e-commerce traffic. We do more streaming. We do other activities online. All this amplify new data and new data sources. This enables more analysis across sectors. This also leads to understanding on opportunities, but also on risks. Now, as you know, data can be used on one hand for a crisis reactive tools, right? So as crisis hits the company, you go and you search through the data. Call this crisis COVID-19 as a crisis. You can use your data.
Mr. Raju, sorry to interrupt you here. We are actually running short of time, so we'll have to wind this up in next 1 minute.
1 minute.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, 1 minute, I'll just close it. Okay, and also you can use it as a reactive tool. I'll just give you two examples here quickly. The first one is right now, we are familiar with employee data capture, tracing, and monitoring. You know your employee's location, you know the incidence of COVID in the locality, you know the daily activities and movement. They also report probably the health condition on daily thing. Now, knowing this enables you to know the risk that your employee may get sick. that can be linked to knowing the probability that the project that he is working on will get affected. And knowing that will to an understanding on what's the overall impact of COVID to your business. That's one example from the employee perspective. Second one is from the supply chain response. The same thing. By superimposing your COVID data and models it with your supply chain network, transportation availability, you'll get more insight into potential disruption. You get a visibility for better planning. You can anticipate alternate solution before a disruption happens. Okay, so let me close this. So let me close this by giving you two takeaways. The first one is that COVID-19 has not broken the cybersecurity protocols and tools. It has only merely exposed the inherent weaknesses and lack of robustness in the new situation. And the second thing is use COVID-19 as an opportunity to increase awareness on the importance of cybersecurity in your organization and to embrace data in your decision-making process. Thank you very much. Sorry if I crossed my allotted time.
Thank you so much, Mr. Munusamy. Great insights into the Indonesia market and how these two key factors are important for today's organizations. So before we move to Mr. Rajesh, I think we'll have a polling session. So Malar, over to you. Can you please project the polls?
Sure, we will do that. There you go. Again, an interesting one. Like I said earlier, there are no right or wrong answers. Feel free to tell us what you think is the best one according to your experience. Last 10 seconds. If you have still not answered, time to do it now. We'll just show up what it looks like. 5 seconds. 4, 3. Thank you. And let us see the answers, please. Fantastic. So nearly 28 people, yeah, good. Again, more than 50% say it's travel. Thank you so much for your answers. Over to you, Pranab, back.
Thanks, everybody. So I think one thing that people miss the most is travel, yeah? So once the crisis is over, I'm sure the airlines and the hotel industry is going to boom like anything. Well, without
and then we'll be complaining too much travel.
Right. So without taking any further time, I'll request our next speaker, Mr. Rajesh, to take over. Mr. Rajesh, over to you now.
Yeah, Pranab, thank you. Thank you, Pranab. And good morning, everyone. Can we have the presentation up, Malhar? Yeah. Thanks for a wonderful prelude and context, Raju. I will basically try to pick up from what Raju had mentioned, why cybersecurity matters, and if there is a hope that the cyber attacks are going to go down. That's a very bad hope, because cybercrime on an annual basis constitutes about $500 billion. And if you look at the various expenditures that are there in the world for crime, pilferage is highest at 1.5% of GDP, followed by transactional crime, car crashes, and narcotics. It's important to note that cybercrime is just below the cost of the narcotics crime globally. And especially with lockdown being enforced, I'm sure with not much of movement in the narcotics trade, many of them would have shifted from narcotics to cybercrime. And cybercrime also extracts about 15 to 20% of internet's economic value And why it is more important to look at cyber attacks and also the measure to safeguard oneself from cyber attacks is the cost of cyber attacks is just about 24%. But the loss of productivity on account of cyber attack is about 76%. So especially in the current COVID times, where many of the industries are already experiencing loss of productivity, especially the manufacturing industries, and a cyber attack will further derail them and will cause a further loss of productivity damages. So it's very important to safeguard from a cyber attack perspective. Next slide, please. So can anyone guess what these are? These look as very, very, innocent email topics saying latest coronavirus update, UNICEF COVID-19 tips, warning coronavirus, COVID-19 not zip. Of course, zip files are always doubted. And coronavirus COVID-19 update. These are actually the files that have been circulated by the cyber attackers on the subject pertaining to COVID-19, and they have what we call as RATs, remote administration tools like Loki bot and the others. So the gullible people who think that this particular email pertains to COVID-19, and then they tend to download that particular email, and then remotely it will install a remote administration tool which kind of takes control of your entire machine and your entire device. It's in fact very sad to note that most of the cyber attackers have gone after charities. So they set up spoofed websites, spoofed email IDs that belong to some of the famous charities, and then started perpetrating the cyber crimes using those particular email IDs and using those websites. Next one, please. So in terms of how COVID-19 accelerated cybersecurity challenges, Raju had mentioned that when people started work from home, there was a significant expansion of what we call as the network perimeter. There is also significant expansion of the attack surface. So the applications which were henceforth confined to an organization network perimeter, which was very, very limited, they got expanded, as a result of which the attack surface has expanded. And on the left hand side, you will see in terms of the various data points pertaining to cyber attacks, 33% increase in cyber attacks, 35% increase in malware detection, and 55% in terms of questionable URLs and blocking of those particular URLs. On the right side, you will see a chart pertaining to Google Trends. This chart is based on the most searched term, which is the cyber attack. And cyber attack during the COVID times has become one of the most searched term, not only in a particular part of the world, but across the world, and few countries contributing to that increase in traffic. In essence, what I'm trying to tell you, because of COVID-19 related initiatives from the organization pertaining to work from home, the cyber defenses that are required by organization have leaped by 15 years. I repeat, the cyber defenses that are required by the organization have leaped by 15 years in 0 day. So organizations were left with very, very limited time to upgrade, to upscale their cyber defenses. Next one, please. So what should organizations do and the individuals do? From an organization's perspective, they have to take into account multiple things. But in our assessment, if they implement 4 or 5 key initiatives, that should be able to take care of most of the cyber attacks. The first thing first, all organizations should enforce what we call as multi-factor authentication for accessing organization applications. If your employees are accessing corporate applications like attendance systems, corporate applications like payroll systems, or any other systems. And if they just have a username and a password, that is not enough. You need to strengthen that further with a two-factor authentication with an OTP. In fact, even at TechM, even though after we have a multi-factor authentication process, what we did is we proactively commenced vulnerability assessment, scanning, and penetration testing of all our network elements. And we found a couple of URLs which were deprecated, and there was a possibility of SQL code injection. SQL code injection is one of the methods by which the cyber attackers gain access to the network elements. So the first thing first, implement a multi-factor authentication. The second one, as I said earlier, when people start working from home, the network perimeter expands, the attack surface expands, and everybody is going after the perimeter. So it's important to anonymize the attack surface. It is important to anonymize the data. It is important to anonymize the network elements. The third one, implement an endpoint protection for all devices. And the fourth one, which is the latest trend in the cybersecurity space, and these services are easily accessible. There are several vendors, and they offer what we call as zero trust network access. See, gone are the days when people used to say, trust everyone and don't verify anyone. Then it moved into a scenario where don't trust, verify everyone. And now it is coming, trust and don't verify. And then it is going into a scenario, what we call as don't trust anyone and verify everyone. And also use real-time threat intelligence to block exploits and malware, filter malicious URLs, and perform what we call as DNS sinkholing. This is from an organization perspective. Now let's look at what individuals need to be doing. Individuals also need to implement a good password hygiene, use strong passwords, and also enforce two-factor authentication wherever is possible. Take the responsibility of updating systems and software. Ensure that you access applications, organization applications, as well as mission-critical personal applications only from secured Wi-Fi points, and gain a full awareness of COVID-19 scams. I will tell you an example from an Indian perspective. The Indian government has launched a COVID-19 monitoring app, and very soon the attackers from our neighboring country came up with a similar looking app, and we already had 200 million downloads of that particular app, propagating malware across. And most important, the last one, the most important, segregate the work devices from personal devices. Use the work devices for work and use personal devices for personal internet browsing. Next one, please. So I had, based on my experience and based on my limited understanding, I had assembled in terms of what Indonesia should do. Before I assembled this slide, I looked up in terms of the latest cyber attack traffic. I went to Akamai Technologies, which publishes reports on a weekly basis. And if I look at the total cyber attacks that have happened from May 24 to May 31st last month, it's not a dated data point, it's a data point from the last month. The world experienced 200 million cyber attacks, of which 3.1 million cyber attacks were in Indonesia alone. 3.1 million cyber attacks in Indonesia alone. Now, if we do the math, the total cyber attacks in Indonesia will translate to about 155 million attacks per annum. And if we take 255 million population in Indonesia, it shows that almost everyone would have had an attack either on their organizational infrastructure or on their personal infrastructure. And previously I mentioned in our own scanning, we found that there were deprecated emails resulting in SQL code injection. And as per Akamai report, 97% of the cyber attacks were through SQL injection. So it becomes very, very important to safeguard oneself from that. And why should we safeguard ourselves from cyber attacks? One, it results in loss of revenue for organizations, and a cyber attack at a national level results in loss of national reputation as well. So I have put together what Indonesia should be doing. First, they need to focus on key imperatives. There is no proper cyber security law or bill. There is no at a national level. The need of the hour is to look at that particular national cybersecurity law or bill, which covers the cybersecurity needs of large enterprises, SMEs and MSMEs. And most people who are vulnerable to cyber attacks are the micro SMEs as well as SMEs, where the cybersecurity awareness is very, very limited, as Raju had mentioned before. And why does Indonesia need a cybersecurity bill? Because currently there is a law which was enforced in the year 2016, which is called as Law on Electronic Information and Transactions, which takes care of only it doesn't cover the cyber intervention. It doesn't cover cyber interception. It neither covers e-commerce governance. So there is a need from the government perspective to create cyber threat and defense organization or a platform at the national level to protect Indonesian cyberspace. From a suggested approach, we suggest that government should invest in military-grade, state-owned Indonesian data centers. I repeat, state-owned Indonesian data centers. Government may like to consider subsidies as well as incentives for SMBs when they are investing in cybersecurity infrastructure and practices. And more important is there is a need to create cybersecurity awareness, not only in organizations, but also in educational institutions. Today, we say that younger generation are digital natives. They know how to get onto a digital world, but they don't know how to secure themselves in a digital world. So it is imperative that we train these millennials how to secure their digital lives, because they live a fairly larger part of their life on digital channels rather than in physical channel. And proposed initiatives, definitely the government should promote public-private partnership programs. Government should look at creating a network of ethical hackers in Indonesia who will come together and protect the critical national infrastructure. You need to look at securing critical national infrastructure like online citizen identity platforms, payment systems, tax systems, and more important, also focus on cloud security as more and more applications are moving from enterprise to cloud. And in addition to that, look at implementing air-gapped data centers, remote private access, and as I mentioned earlier, zero trust architecture, which becomes very, very important. And in these initiatives, the next slide, please, we'll be very happy to contribute through TechM capabilities. We have a rich experience of implementing various initiatives for governments, not only in India, but also across the world. We have implemented global SOCs for multiple government entities the world over, and also secured.
Quick time check. Sorry to interrupt you. I think we'll have to finish this as early as possible.
Sure, one more minute. And have also secured mission critical enterprise organizations. The last and the final slide from my side, sorry for overshooting the time. So 5 things that an organization can do to protect themselves from a cyber attack: implement continuous compliance assurance, anonymize the critical network infrastructures, anonymization as a service, implement AI-based cyber defenses, secure email security, and also secure work from home practices. And TechM has launched all these applications, all these services ever since COVID-19 started resulting in cyber attacks the world over. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rajesh. Sorry, there was one question that has come up. So can we go ahead now?
I think Dave has a presentation to do that. to do, Malhar? Maybe
We'll take it at the end.
maybe we can take that question after Deb is done.
Sure. Thank you.
So thanks, Rajesh. I think, Rajesh, you have given us some very good suggestions after highlighting the concerns that the Indonesia government faces here, and also some of the solutions that can be implemented in some industry verticals immediately. So thanks once more, Rajesh. And over to you, Deb. I think request you to also give us your opinion on data analytics and how it plays a critical role in for conglomerates today in Indonesia. Thank you. Over to you.
Sure. Thanks, Pranab. So I will speak about probably in the next 10, 15 minutes odd, I'll speak about the data analytics part. So can we move to the next slide, please? Okay, so when we say, just one point here is that I have been in this part of the world, so I'm based out of Singapore for the last 20 odd years and had been acquainted and associated with Indonesia probably for over the last 17 years. And I have seen how data analytics has evolved in Indonesia, since 2003 when I started interacting or traveling to Jakarta or Indonesia. So we have actually moved. I mean, there had been a paradigm shift. So we have moved from, as we call, post-mortem analysis, or we call it descriptive reporting, all the way to what we see, which emergence of predictive analytics, okay, from descriptive to predictive analytics in probably mid-2010, I would say 2014, 2015 timeframe, when people started looking at how can the system predict that what I should be doing. And now from there, we have moved to an era where we are looking at prescriptive analytics, we are looking at cognitive analytics, where the system is actually telling me, or system is trying to tell me that what should I be doing? What's the prescription of the system based on past events, based on past history of data? So this is basically how it has moved. So when we move to the next slide, what we will see is also the adoption of data analytics. So this is also something which I have seen. So if you look at the different technologies, and this is all very much related to Indonesia because this had been taken from a World Economic Forum report, that if we look at the different technologies like robotic process automation, Internet of Things and all, we see adoption of data analytics, and now I think also artificial intelligence as a part of that analytics process probably is the highest. Now, having said or having given this preamble about data analytics and how people are really getting excited, let's take a look at in the next few slides. Can we move to the next slide on COVID and post-COVID, how data analytics is going to reshape the way we are looking at things. So if you look at, I think I don't probably need to emphasize on the fact that how today we are facing a global economic challenge to an extent where we had never seen. I don't think any of us has seen this kind of economic challenge over the last 50 odd years or even more. So what we are looking at today is absolute instability and uncertainty in the economy today. We don't even know what's going to happen. Look at the different industries like aviation or hospitality, we don't even know. So people are facing actually real big problem or challenges in terms of accurate forecasting or sales forecasting. Simply the reason being that we have immense fluctuation in terms of consumer demand. We don't even know how the consumer is going to behave tomorrow, because we are seeing a paradigm shift from people, I'm giving an example, people moving into a store and buying, and from there to online shopping. So shorter product life cycles for that matter. And another very, very important thing which is actually affecting the economy is supply chain disruptions. So next slide, please. Okay, so now let's take some real life examples in post-COVID in different, and I'll try to cover a few industry verticals that what we see in the post-COVID era and how data analytics is playing a major role in that. So if you look at a manufacturing organization, I'm talking about a shop floor, I'm talking about probably a warehouse kind of a scenario. Now, we know that now there's a term that we're using called the new normal. So the new normal is today is wearing mask, wearing gloves, maintaining social distancing, using sanitization every place. Now, probably it's easier to preach those things or even probably try and practice, but it's very, very difficult to monitor. I'll give you an example. How do we really monitor in a shop floor where you see suddenly 10 people, maybe during their off time or break time, jostling around or huddling around one corner and just chatting up? How do we do that? Because we now know that's not they're supposed to do. So moving to the next slide, if we move, we'll see the emergence of solutions that we talk about, like Safety Plus Plus, where we are talking about real-time monitoring of people coming in, people loitering around, or people grouping around, which they're not supposed to do. Facial recognition of people wearing masks against people wearing no masks. So how do we actually segregate those, and then someone comes and tells them that you have to wear masks? We are talking about online and real-time video feed. We are talking about intelligent video analytics driven by AI ML. So these are some examples of solution, and everything is based on data. So without that data, without the data feed, without the video feed, there is no analytics. So that's precisely the point here. So we are seeing a new emergence of different types of solutions based on data analytics and AI. Now, next slide, we will talk about another very, very important part, which is basically supply chain disruption. Now, we all know, because I think one of the major world's provider of different parts, raw materials, is China. And we have seen what happened since March end, when China went into lockdown, and many of the organizations, many of, I would say, retailers, many of the manufacturers started suffering because they didn't have enough of raw material or enough of semi-finished material for actually consumption and production. So the question is, how do I find that, which of my suppliers are affected by COVID? What transporters are affected by getting COVID for the COVID scenario? How many critical parts I'm sourcing from one supplier? Now, do I have that visibility across my supply chain? So that's the question. So that gives a margins to, if we move to the next slide, again, solutions where we are talking about supplier risk mitigation with the help of analytics and AI. And these are real life solutions. So these are not solutions which are just in the thought process, but these are solutions that people are really looking at, people are deploying. So if you look at, I'm not trying to make it technical, but I'm just trying to explain that what we are seeing here is that you have so much of data, supplier data, external data, even customer data, even contract manufacturer data, third-party data. How do we put that whole data in one place? How do we apply analytics? How do we apply data science, AI, ML, and start having a real-time monitoring of end-to-end supply chain process? How do I make the system do prescriptive analytics and tell me which supplier to go for, which supplier not to go for? So these are some of the examples of new solutions that are emerging out of this COVID situation. So if we move to the next slide, another example is banking. We have seen massive amount of online banking transactions in the last 2.5 months because people are not going to banks. So we are doing online money transfer. We are purchasing everything online now, right from groceries to clothes and everything, and using our credit cards. Now, while that has happened, this has also exposed ourselves to risk, exposed ourselves to frauds. In Singapore alone, we have seen so many cases in the last 2 months where there have been scams. There had been scam calls, people calling us and telling us, I'm calling from Simtel, I'm calling from a telco, your account system has been hacked. Can you open up? Can you log into your bank account and do a dummy transaction and actually coerce them to make real transactions? So in the next slide, if we move, what we are seeing in the post-COVID area is again AI ML-driven, data or analytics-driven solution for fraud prevention, fraud detection. Banks are thinking about, how to do customer onboarding process. In fact, just to give you an example, State Bank of India, probably the largest bank in Asia in terms of sheer volume of 800 million customers, They are talking about a video KYC or know your customer process, which was unprecedented. I don't think even State Bank of India thought about this 6 months back, that how do we do this? So, these are, we are talking about fraud detection. We are talking about application fraud. At the time of application of a loan, at the time of application of credit card, how does a bank ensure that the person applying or the SME, whoever is applying for a loan, is actually, they are not exposing to risk in terms of default or in terms of fraud? So these are some of the solutions that we see, an emergence of AI ML in this space very, very heavily. Next slide, please. Okay, so next few slides, I'll very quickly cover about the data analytics in the future. So moving forward, so I always believe that pictures speak 1,000 words. And if you look at this, I really don't have to say much about what banking of tomorrow will be about. So with banks, most of the banks very heavily moving on to digital banking, I think the focus will be very heavily on customer service, operational efficiency, and at the same time, how do they manage risk and fraud? So this is going to be tomorrow's banking, where more and more people will be using online banking, more and more people will be actually using system, or lesser people will be going to the banks, and therefore the banks need to gear up in terms of how do they actually service those customers properly, maintain a customer satisfaction, maintain churn rates, and increase operational efficiency. So next slide, please. Yeah, so manufacturing of the future. Again, and this is not something, when I use the word future, this is not exactly we are talking about 2025 or 2030. Actually, this has started happening. I have known organizations or manufacturing companies who has actually established control tower to monitor how efficiently they're managing outputs, how efficiently they're managing energy utilization. I have seen people getting complete connected supply chain process. There is something called SNOP, sales and operations planning, end-to-end connection between sales and production, so that when we know there is a change in sales forecast, how is my production affected by that? So these are, again, people are more and more adopting digitization or digitalization in manufacturing as well. So next slide. We will talk about retail. Again, we know that the scene of retail is changing really, really well. I mean, we all perhaps have noticed one thing, like when I travel quite frequently, or I used to, maybe I'll use that term, that when I go to an airport, when I visit an airport in Singapore, I somehow, many, many times, I get an SMS from Citibank or DBS Bank saying that it seems you are in the airport, these are the special offers with these cards, or this thing. So that is basically real-time location-based personal promotion we are talking about. So we are talking about virtual trying out facilities. We are talking about automated checkout process. So this is what the retail will evolve in terms of customer experience, and everything, if you look at whatever we are sharing here, whatever we are talking about, real-time location-based promotion and all, everything is based on data. Data based on my personal behavior, my preference, my social media, whatever I am posting. So these is, again, nothing but data analytics and AI-based solutions. Next slide, please.
Deb, sorry, a quick time check. I think you'll have to wind up in the next 1 minute. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Same with mining. I think Indonesia mining is very strong. We are talking about real-time feeds from earth movers and other things on mining, and how to make operational efficiency in terms of a visibility end-to-end. Next slide. Yeah, so same with farming, again, real-time feeds, and these are being practiced in Indonesia, and otherwise also people are adopting more and more data and analytics-based mining process, or even for that matter, farming process, to see more and more production output. So next slide. So to summarize, what I'm trying to say here is more and more organizations are turning into analytics to deliver smarter outcomes, whether it's executive team or executive management looking at predictive analytics, to predict their forecast, predict their profitability even, supply chain management, end-to-end visibility across the supply chain process. Customer service is more geared up using analytics to see personalized promotion or personalized management of their customers. So this is what the analytics of tomorrow is going to deliver for all organizations across. The last slide, next slide, is how Tech Mahindra is basically geared up to handle analytics. So we have a very, very well-established data analytics practice with 7,000 people across the globe. And more importantly, we offer an end-to-end service when it comes to data analytics and AI, right from consulting all the way to data management, data migration, data governance process, data visualization, and data science as a platform. And also, last but not the least, we have our own IPs and platforms that actually embeds along with in a process AI and data analytics solution and actually helps customer achieve their analytic outcomes. That's it from my side. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Deb. And over to you, Pranab, for the wrap-up comments, please. Thank you.
Yeah, Mala, there were some interesting questions as well, right? You want to ask a couple of questions? I think we'll wind it up in the next 3-4 minutes.
Sure. So let me put this first question. This is from Mr. Sagar Gondela. Given that COVID has huge impact on organizations in terms of their cash flows from core business activities, until now, cybersecurity is viewed as a support activity. Do you think organizations would increase their spending on strengthening cybersecurity while their core business are in danger? Rajesh?
Yeah, absolutely, Malha. That's a great question. So the catch-22 situation with cybersecurity is sometimes the expenditure is more than the damage that it causes, right? So one needs to be very careful and then decide in terms of what is the optimal spend in cybersecurity. So the 4 or 5 aspects that I had mentioned, from a multi-factor authentication, from a continuous scanning of the network and applications, and from anonymization and zero trust network access, these are the minimum that organization should look at it. And the spend on these aspects is not that significantly high. There are several opportunities that are available from both from a product as well as from a managed services perspective. So at the minimum, the organization should look at those 4 or 5 initiatives, even if it means an extra spend, because trust me, it is going to give a better ROI, not in long term, but also not only in long term, but also in immediate term. So those aspects the organization should look at implementing for sure.
Thank you, Rajesh. And the next one is for Deb. So the question is basically around which industry or a vertical do you think would be, say, best able to leverage data and analytics?
Okay, so traditionally, if you look at data and analytics, I have seen more adoption of data analytics in industries like banking or retail, where they have more customer interactions. I mean, like insurance for that matter as well. So even in the post-COVID scenario, if you look at the industries that one of the industries that got very badly hit was retail. Okay, because of the shops closures, the malls closure and all. So that's one area I see a lot of effort going in data analytics adoption. Banking, again, as I mentioned, because there's a huge amount of transaction now being done online. And at the same time, it's getting exposed to the risk of frauds or scams or even other kind of risk. So, and people are really thinking that how to better serve or how to improve their digital banking process. So I think these are some of the industries that we see adopting data analytics more, but that doesn't mean nonetheless that other industries like manufacturing for that matter, because manufacturing, in fact, in the last 10 years have geared up a lot in terms of adopting data analytics.
Thank you so much. I think, unfortunately, we are running short of time, so we won't be able to pick up other questions. But I would like the viewers or the attendees of the webinar to probably connect with the speakers over the LinkedIn or other platforms. And I'm sure our speakers would be glad to answer them.
Also, Malhar, if we have the email coordinates of the people who ask questions, we can give them a written response to the question so that the questions don't go unanswered or unresponded to.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Rajesh, for that. And we will do that in the follow-up mail that we'll be sending. And over to Pranab for the final comments, please.
Thank you, Malar. And I think we had some wonderful sessions today and some great insights into how security and data analytics plays a key role in today's businesses. Also some very interesting takeaways, and it's good to know that how industries are shaping in this crisis, right? So some very interesting examples were cited by Raju, Deb, and Rajesh, how industries are actually changing their strategies in these COVID crisis. And technology adoption is critical for companies to adapt themselves, to these changing times. So thanks, everybody. I would also like to thank all the participants for joining today's session. Thanks for your interest in this webinar and in Tech Mahindra. On behalf of CII and Tech Mahindra, I would like to once again thank all the speakers and everybody else for helping us organize this wonderful session today. Unfortunately, we were unable to take all the queries, and like Rajesh mentioned, please send in your queries to us. I'm sure all of you have our contact details. We'll be more than happy to respond to your queries. Thank you once more, and have a nice day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Stay
All the
safe.
speakers, and thanks everyone for joining.
Take care.
Stay safe.